Learning objective number 4 is to contrast the product cost computed under an activity-based costing method with those calculated under a conventional costing method. We've just calculated our cost per unit using an activity-based costing system, and we came up with a total unit cost for the DVD unit of $207.80, and the CD unit was $95.55. Let's now go ahead and look at our cost per unit under a traditional costing system using a single plant-wide predetermined overhead rate. If Comtek's traditional cost system applies manufacturing overhead to products based on direct labor hours, and each product requires 2 direct labor hours to complete, then our total estimated direct labor hours will be as follows. We are going to produce 50,000 DVD units at 2 hours per unit for 100,000 hours, 200,000 CD units at $2 per hour for 400,000 hours. So our total estimated direct labor hours or activity level is 500,000 hours. The next step then is to calculate our predetermined overhead rate. And we'll recall our total estimated overhead cost, which was $10 million, and divide it by our 500,000 direct labor hours and come up with a single plant-wide predetermined overhead rate of $20 per direct labor hour. Then, in calculating our unit cost for both our DVD and CD units, we'll take our 2 direct labor hours per unit and multiply it by our $20 per hour predetermined overhead rate, and we come up with a manufacturing overhead assigned to each unit of $40 per unit. And we get a total unit cost for our DVD units of $150, and our CD unit cost is $110 per unit. If we compare our per unit costs under our activity-based costing with our direct labor costing for the CD units, we can see under activity-based costing we would assign $25 in overhead, while under a single plant-wide rate we would assign $40 in overhead. So our plant-wide rate assigns $40 more in overhead to the CD player. On the other hand, if we look at our DVD units, we see when we use our activity-based costing system, we assigned $97.80 to the DVDs, where under our direct labor costing, using a single plant-wide rate, we only assigned $40 in manufacturing overhead. So again, under our traditional system, since each unit, the DVD units and the CD units, required the same amount of direct labor hours, they were both assigned the same amount of manufacturing overhead per unit, which was $40 per unit. But under our activity-based costing system, more overhead was assigned to the DVD unit and less overhead to the CD unit. When companies implement activity-based costing systems, they typically shift costs from high-volume products produced in large batches to low-volume products produced in small batches. This occurs because of the existence of many batch-level and product-level costs within our overhead cost structure. We can see this if we examine our estimated cost pools and our estimated activity levels for each one of our cost pools. Recall that we expected to produce 200,000 CD units and 50,000 DVD units, and each one required an equal amount of direct labor time. So when we applied our manufacturing overhead on the basis of direct labor hours, we applied 4 times as much overhead to our CD units as we did our DVD units, because they required 4 times as much labor in total. Once we shifted to an activity-based costing system, however, we can see some of our machine-related cost, our setup cost, our production order, and parts administration costs were no longer allocated in a 4-to-1 ratio. Machine-related costs will be allocated in a 7-to-3 ratio. More of our machine setup cost will be allocated, in fact 3 times as much machine-related costs will be allocated to the DVD units as CD units. Parts production or production orders will be allocated twice as much to the DVDs as there will be allocated to the CDs. We had 800 expected production orders compared to 400 production orders. In terms of parts, Our DVDs are more complex than our CD players, and they require 4 parts for every 3 parts that were required in a CD player. So we will allocate our $350,000 in parts-related overhead on a 4 to 3 basis. Again, back when we used a single plant-wide rate, all of our overhead was allocated on the basis of direct labor hours, and it was allocated 4 times as much was allocated to the CDs as was allocated to the DVDs. But switching to the activity-based costing, since we have a different ratio of activity levels, we have more cost shifted to those low volume product, which is our DVD player. The illustrations we've looked at in this chapter assume that our activity-based costing system is being used for external financial reporting purposes. If our activity-based costing system is being only used for internal decision-making purposes, we may want to make 2 important modifications. First, rather than just allocating manufacturing or product cost or manufacturing overhead to our products, we should also think about allocating our selling and administrative overhead costs to products. In addition, another modification that's often made is removing facility level cost from our product cost, as these are fixed and won't vary based on the number of products we produce. They won't vary on the number of units we produce. So to get a more accurate product costing, we'll often treat facility level costs as a fixed cost that does not get assigned to any of our products.